And welcome back to Pokemon Team Videos. And this week's suggestion comes to us from Parker Smith. Now, I had already done Shaggy Rogers. I, in theory, could have done one for all the Scooby Gang, but each individually. But Parker Smith asked, what is the Scooby Gang's team? Specifically, what is the true Scooby Gang Pokemon team? Now, this is a bit more difficult. Similar to when I had to do the Young Six for My Little Pony, in the sense that yes, I could in theory do a team for each of them, but I'm not going to do a team for each of them in one single video. Because between the 5 of them, that's 30 different Pokemon, and I'm not going to do that for one video. They would each have to get their own individual video, obviously. But as a team, we can kind of figure out what to do with this. Now, there is a problem with doing the team. There's only 5 members of the Scooby Gang, if you're including Scooby. 4 if you're only counting the human parts of them, which I'm not. I'm counting Scooby. Now, you might be arguing, well, what about Scrappy? To which I counter with, what about Scrappy? Scrappy, let's be clear. If Scrappy was around from the beginning, or when Scrappy was introduced, stayed a main part of the Scooby Gang, we could have talk about Scrappy. But the fact of the matter is that A, he was introduced later in the game. B, he was removed later in the game. And C, while I'm sure there are people who like Scrappy, is wildly not liked by the fan base to the point where they made him the villain and pointed out his ego and problems in the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie. So no, to sum it up, we are not doing Scrappy. But that is right the problem, though. How do I do a 6-man Pokemon team for a 5-member Scooby Gang? Well, let's get the obvious one out of the way. I've already done what I think is my Scooby-Doo Pokemon, because there is no Great Dane Pokemon at this time. Scooby-Doo is represented by Bolthound. It's a very friendly dog. It does have at least I think the most similar design to a Great Dane, as opposed to the rest of the dog Pokemon, because obviously Growlithe and Arcanine are no good. Houndoom, Houndour are no good. Poochyena and Mightyena are no good. Fennekin's or foxes. Think words here. Riolu and Lucario are jackals. Rockruff and Lycanroc I did consider, but Lycanroc is definitely more of a wolf than he is a dog. And that's, I think, the problem with Lycanroc. Whereas Bolthound, definitely Yamper wasn't going to work because it's a freaking Corgi. I love Corgi. I work at a pet store, so I can see all kinds of dogs, including Corgis, and Corgis are adorable. But no, I thought Bolthound is a leftover from Shaggy's team. And really, that's what I think saved the whole team, dynamic team build, if you will. Because I realized I can just incorporate at least 2 other members of Shaggy's team into the group that match the group's dynamic. Now, that might seem like cheating. Well, why don't you just do that for Velma, Daphne, or Fred? And the answer to that is A, I already had those Pokemon available to use for Shaggy. B, Shaggy and Scooby are actually, when you really look at Scooby-Doo, they are Scooby's the build star. But that means Shaggy, being his owner and, his companion, get a lot of the screen time. Not to say Fred, Velma, and Daphne also don't get screen time. They do, but let's be honest. Shaggy and Scooby, being the comic relief and the fun for the kids more than anything else, are the ones who get a lot more screen time more often than not. So it makes sense that if I were to pull any Pokemon from anyone, or give anyone an extra Pokemon to fill out the team, it would be Shaggy. So real quick, I'm going to just get his out of the way, which I've already used on his team prior to this. So Wimpod, because Scooby and Shaggy are wimps. They're not truly cowards. They're just scaredy cats. But they are going to run away in an instant, which is what Wimpod does. And then the fact that Scooby and Shaggy love to eat means I had to put Munchlax on the team as well. Now, I could have put Slurpuff. I could have put Aromatisse. I could have put a Cottony. Not Cottony. Swirlix. Cotton candies. I could have put the food Pokemon there. But the fact of the matter is they love to eat, so does Munchlax. So that filled it out. Now, we get into the actual, okay, what about the remaining 3? We got Velma, we got Daphne, and we got Fred. Let's start with Velma first. Velma, I felt, was actually the easiest one to figure out. And that is because Velma is the brains of it. She's the bookworm, she's the planner, she's the genius, if you will. Maybe not a true genius in any real sense of the term, but she's very, very intelligent. So I wanted a Pokemon that was going to be very, very intelligent. And that meant immediately for me, I'm like, okay, smart Pokemon, psychic Pokemon. I got that out of the way. But I'm like going through the psychic, I'm like, okay, what is the psychic type that I feel like is closest to Velma, or at least one of them? And it took me a while. I'm like, okay, that one's not bad. That one's okay. No. And I'm like, well, this isn't bad. Do I go with the first stage of this evolution line, the second, or the third? So I did not go with the third because I felt that didn't quite pan out. It gets a bit too menacing. The first stage of this Pokemon's evolution, I'm like, well, it is the literal bookworm. But ultimately, I went with Dottler. Now, why did I go with Dottler over Blipbug? Where Blipbug is clearly the bookworm Pokemon. It is literally a textbook nerd with glasses, which Velma kind of is. Well, for me, I look at Dottler, and it's designed off a radar dish, really. Not true, a different type of, hence like in Dottler, like, the big Dottler dome radar dish. And really, what those are designed to do is like you can send out signals. It's basically a quest for knowledge through different, means. And really, Velma is always, trying to learn more about what's going on. She's trying to understand the situation. Add on the fact it's still a nerdy bug with the glasses. I used a Blipbug and an Orbeetle and Dottler in my first playthrough of Shield and Sword. It's actually it's an early stage psychic type you can get. It's actually a pretty good Pokemon. And it gets a Gigantamax form, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I thought Dottler was actually pretty decent Pokemon to go with. Now, honestly, if I made a team for her, I might include both a Dottler and a Blipbug because they both, I think, are really good. And we've had trainers have multiple Pokemon of the same type multiple times on their team. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I thought Velma's Pokemon was. Daphne was definitely a bit harder because Daphne is kind of a blank. As much as, okay, she's not quite as blank slate as Fred is, but she is pretty blank slate. But one of the things that we do know about her is the fact she comes from money. And the fact that she is pampered and a little, I don't know, prissy isn't the right term. She's a bit spoiled. And that does show up occasionally, at least in the original series. And like in the new Adventures of Scooby-Doo and a pup named Scooby-Doo, things along those lines. So I'm like, okay, a pampered Pokemon. And I quickly realized, like, okay, we already had Scooby, but, there is a poodle Pokemon, Frou-Frou. Now, obviously, the image I'm using is just a standard one, but she would have one of the wacky hairstyle Frou-Frous out there. I have no doubt she would. So, I think that... Now, I could have also gone a Snubbull, because I remember the Snubbull from the anime was a pampered Pokemon. But for me, or a Persian, or a Alolan Meowth. Now, all those are Pokemon that could actually be on her overall team, but ultimately I went with Frou-Frou. I think that is really the most likely candidate in this case, given the fact that you already have a dog on the team, so it made sense maybe have another dog with Frou-Frou. And it being a poodle, kind of the standard pampered pet kind of animal, that's usually my take. That would be my take. So finally we had Fred, and this one was actually the toughest, because when you're talking about a blank slate personality, for the longest time, Fred was that. He's the leader, sure, but he's just the standard nice guy. Oh, all right, gang, let's search out for clues. There's not much really to Fred's personality at first, but he is the guy who kind of just gives the orders. He is the guy who kind of leads everyone, and as the series goes on, especially when we get into some of the movies, you talk about Zombie Island. What was the one where I can't remember the cyberspace one where they go into cyberspace, but they do that one. He is actually someone who actually, and even in the movies, in the second movie, he's like taking on the Ghost Knight. He's actually someone who does get into the physical fray of things. So I'm like, okay, a Pokemon that does, get into the physical fray, sounds like a fighting type. But then a Pokemon that's a leader? I'm like, ooh, that's tough. Because while you could argue, it's like, well, Braviary is a bald eagle, or if it's American. Yeah, but is it a Pokemon that actually leads naturally other Pokemon? Not quite. But ultimately, I'm like, well, let's go back to the Galar region real quick. Phalanx. Now, Phalanx is one of those Pokemon that I've never understood. It's similar to like Execute, because it's multiple Pokemon as one Pokemon. Unless it's all, I think really what it is, it's kind of a hive mentality where, yes, it's technically one Pokemon's mind, but it's all between like different bodies. Phalanx is he's a little Centurion guy that leads a bunch of other little Centurions. He is a fighting type Pokemon that leads. And, he commands the group. They do a bunch of different, techniques, attacks, all that. So ultimately, I felt that was probably the best bet I could have gone with when it comes to a Pokemon fighting type that leads. Now, if I had to make a team for Fred, of all of these characters, Shaggy proved to be a little difficult, but ultimately not too hard in the long term, thanks to the meme lord that has become Ultra Instinct Shaggy. Scooby, if I ever had to if I were to anthropomorphize Scooby and give him a team, that's hardly difficult at all. A lot of canines, a lot of Pokemon that like to eat. There you go. Velma, a lot of intelligence to her, so there's a lot to go with. Even Daphne, there's enough that I can work with Daphne that I can probably make a team. Although Daphne would prove definitely to be difficult. But Fred, I think, would be the challenge character to do. Obviously, the Phalanx would make an honest team if I ever did a team for him. But apart from that, we would be struggling a little bit. Definitely would be struggling a little bit. But that is ultimately, I think, the Mystery Machines, Mystery Inc.'s, Scooby Gang's Pokemon team. Bulltown for Scoob. Wimpod and Munchlax represent the wimpiness of Scoob and Shaggy and their love of food. Dotlard represents Velma's quest for knowledge, quest for learning more about what's going on and her overall intelligence and bookwormish-like nature. For Daphne, because it's a poodle, and poodles are prissy, proper dogs a lot of the time. Actually, they're very good hunting dogs, though. And Phalanx to represent the leadership skills that Fred does seem to show, as well as his initiative to get into the fray physically when the time actually calls for a lot. So, ultimately, that is my thoughts on the Scooby Gang Pokemon team. But, in the end of the day, this is just my opinion. What's your opinion on Scooby Gang's Pokemon team? Put in the comments below, let me know. But thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below, let us know, we'll do a review of it at some point. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you folks later.